There is always something to learn whenever you're doing a study or looking into the life of Jesus. Something for everybody to learn, without exception. The things that Jesus taught, the things that Jesus did, everything about Jesus gives us an opportunity to learn something, to gain, apply something to our lives. And this is maybe especially true in reference to the miracles that Jesus performed. There's a reason he performed miracles, not just for the immediate effect of whatever the miracle was related to, but also the indirect result of what it told people about him, what it showed, what it proved. And this morning, for a few minutes, we're going to look at one of the miracles Jesus performed in Mark chapter 2, first 12 verses of Mark chapter 2. One of the more popular accounts, I guess, of one of Jesus' miracles, as we just saw part of in the scripture reading a second ago. What can we learn about Jesus in this house, the house that he's in, at this place in the New Testament, Mark chapter 2? Spiritual lessons, spiritual applications. First thing that we probably should be impressed with or notice is that Jesus is even willing to come into the house. And when we say the house, we mean my house, your house, anybody's house, any house. Jesus is willing to enter that house. He's not just willing, but he's eager. He wants to enter the house. He wants to enter into the house. There's not a single home represented here today even that Jesus would not like to enter, that he would not like to be a part of, he would not like to come in. Revelation chapter 3 verse 20 says, "Behold," Jesus said, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me." He's standing at your door, knocking. He wants to come in. And he says, if anyone will hear his voice and open the door, he will come in. He'll eat with them. A very intimate and personal act to share in. He's willing to do that. He wants to. He's eager. He told Zacchaeus in Luke 19, verse 5, "Hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." I'm going to your house today. But the Lord doesn't always get in. Sometimes, as the verse implies, there are homes that don't want the Lord to come in. They might treat him like the vacuum cleaner salesman who's knocking at the door. They're eager to enter in too, for different reasons. But a lot of times, most of the time, at least in our household, we've never encountered one, but if we did, I can tell you, we wouldn't really want them to enter into our house. Some people don't want Jesus in their home, in any sense, and not literally in their home, but the Spirit of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, Jesus in a spiritual, figurative sense. But it is a great thing. It is moving to see Jesus invited into a home, and you can always tell. In Luke chapter 24, verse 29, it says, "They urged him strongly, saying, 'Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is now far spent.' So he went in to stay with them." These people, as other people, urged Jesus, "Stay with us." They all wanted him to stay at their house. He was willing to do that. Is Jesus your invited guest? Is Jesus in your home? Have you invited him into your home? Do you invite him? Is he a welcome guest? Is he welcome in our home? He's willing. He wants to be. But is he welcome? Number 2, when Jesus comes into the house, he fills the house. In our text in Mark chapter 2, it says, it was heard that he was in the house after he entered into Capernaum. Many were gathered together so that there was no longer room There was no room. Now, there was no room in a literal sense because there was a lot of people in there. But those people were in there because Jesus was in there. When Jesus is in the house, there is no room. There's no need for worldly entertainment to attract us. When Jesus is in the house, to put it in 21st century terms, if this situation in Mark 2 happened in the 21st century, do you think they would have turned the TV on? I don't think so. Not with Jesus in there. They wouldn't even been thinking about it. Not a thought given to the TV or anything else because Jesus is there. And when Jesus is there, there's no room for anything else at that time to distract or to attract people. When Jesus comes in, He brings a host of other friends to fill the house, as we see in this case, in this text. Some houses are empty today simply because they haven't allowed Jesus to come in. Jesus fills the house when He comes in, and so for that reason, many houses are empty today because they won't let Jesus in. They're empty of happiness. They're empty of any sort of joy or purpose or fulfillment in their lives. Other things have filled up that space. That's what we have a natural habit of doing. When we perceive a void in our lives, we fill it with something. We've got to fill that void with something, and we will inevitably fill it with something. So when Jesus is not allowed and is not welcome in our home, in our house, the void that is left is we're going to fill it with something. And it will show itself. It will manifest itself in different ways. Some people embrace religion to fill that void. Religion in a, I guess, inclusive sense. But that void sometimes is tried to be filled with religion in a more profitable sense. True religion even. But other things too often fill that void instead. Jesus should always come first in our house. He fills our house. He should fill our house. Number 3, similar to that, when Jesus is in the house, His presence can't be hidden. You can't have Jesus in your house and the other people in your house not know that Jesus is in your house. I dare you to try to find a house in the New Testament that had Jesus in it that people didn't know. The people that were in the house didn't know that He was there. Most of the time, or many of the times, people from outside the house heard that He was there. That's what we read here. The old ASV that I have in front of me says in verse 1 that it was noised. Interesting word there. It was noised that He was in the house. When He came to this house, the noise that He was in that house started going everywhere. Jesus is in this house. People knew Jesus is in that house. His presence can't be hidden. It was reported, some of the versions might say. In chapter 7, verse 24, it says, uses the phrase that it could not escape notice. Jesus' presence could not escape notice. When Jesus is in the house, His presence can't be hidden. The same is true for us today. If He is in our house, the world will know about it. They'll know. And the opposite is also true. That if Jesus is not in our house, they'll know that too. They'll notice. It will not escape notice. The minute Christ leaves, the change is noticeable. What is the status of your house then, right now? Is Jesus in it? Can you see Jesus in it? If you can't see Jesus in it, He's probably not in it. Because when He's there, His presence can't be hidden. Number 4, those who come to Jesus may meet with difficulty. There are many blessings to having Jesus in your house, but there are also obstacles that can arise for that reason. If If anybody's ever told you that if you will let Jesus into your house, all your troubles and sorrows will go away, they have lied to you. Not even Jesus believed that. If being Jesus caused Jesus a lot of trouble, don't you think believing in Jesus will cause you a lot of trouble? Of course, we learn that in the lives of the people that did believe in Him. Just because He was Jesus, He met with a lot of difficulty. Well, people who followed Him because He was Jesus also met with difficulty. And those of us today who seek to come to Him will also meet difficulty along the way. There's always a crowd of hearers around the door. When Jesus is there, and this in this case was no exception. Many were gathered together so that there was no longer room for them. No, not even about the door. And He spoke the word unto them. You couldn't even get into this house. There were people filling that house, and there was an obstacle. We're about to meet the characters here. Could call them the protagonists if we don't count Jesus to be the protagonist, which He is. There were some people that were trying to get to Jesus that had difficulty along the way. These were people that had not yet come to Jesus, so to speak, that met difficulty in getting to Jesus. And that may be the case for people today as well. The obstacles that we face may not be a crowd of people, literally like theirs was, but it may be a certain person. My mom, my dad, my spouse, my best friend. They could be obstacles of me coming to Jesus. Maybe what will they think? They won't approve. And then it becomes an obstacle. In Matthew chapter 23, verse 13, we read how the Pharisees were guilty of this. Jesus said, "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves, nor allow those who would enter to go in." The Pharisees were obstacles. Jesus told them bluntly, you don't go into the kingdom, and you won't let anybody go into the kingdom. I hope it's not the case that we may have been guilty of that very thing. Well, somebody says, I've never tried to keep anybody from becoming a Christian. I would never stop somebody. If somebody came to me and said, I'm really thinking about becoming a Christian, I've never told them, no, don't do that. Or no, you can't do that. Well, maybe not. But have you ever, by your own indifference, killed the spirit of another person? This is a very common thing. A great tragedy in the Lord's church. Many would-be Christians have been guilty of this. I would never directly stop somebody from becoming a Christian or, drain the baptistry so they can't be baptized. Over my dead body, you become a Christian. But what about my indifference indirectly resulting in somebody falling away from Jesus or failing to come to Him? That hits a little bit closer to home. But these men that we read about here in Mark chapter 2, they were so eager in their search for Jesus that they were not deterred by any of these obstacles. In fact, they bring their paralytic friend all the way there. And then they get there and there's so many people, how are they going to get in there? Jesus is obviously in the center of this whole scene. Here's all these people. Even if they physically could get through these people, the people aren't going to appreciate it very much. It's not really the proper, social etiquette would dictate that's not really something you should do. The people may physically not let you come through there. But they didn't stop. They were not deterred. They didn't try to squeeze through the people. But they tried a different way. They found a way. In fact, they made a way. When they didn't find a way, they made one. Nothing was going to stop them from getting to Jesus. When a person becomes a Christian, they become on the Lord's side. And when you're on the Lord's side, you have the Lord's help. If you're trying to do right and be zealous, don't be dismayed by somebody else's indifference or slackness. That's easier said than done. So simple. It may take the zeal of 20 people to fire a flame inside me, but it could just take the lack of zeal in one person to put it out, if I let it. But be like these men. Don't let anything stop you from getting to Jesus or staying with Jesus. Do your job and do it well, regardless of whatever else may happen or be happening around you. Number 5, some will never come to Jesus unless they're brought to Him. This is maybe a difficult pill to swallow, but it is still true. And don't take it wrong. This is not to say that some people will require or you have to bring them, drag them to Jesus as if you can save somebody else. But some people will never get to Jesus unless they're brought to Him. Maybe that is a better way to put it. Some people will never get to Him. This paralytic man would have never gotten to Jesus, literally. Could not, in his case, in the physical, literal sense. But he was brought to Jesus. This helpless, poor man, if it wasn't for his friends, and they were friends. This is what friends look like. If you ever wondered, friends look like other things too, but this is an example of what real friends look like. You think it was easy to carry him? I don't think so. But they did. Four of his friends. John 1:42 says about how Andrew brought Peter to Jesus. He brought him to Jesus. He went to his brother and said, "We found the Christ, the Messiah." And he brought him to Jesus. I don't know what Peter was doing that day. I don't know why Peter wasn't with his brother and the other of John's disciples. I don't know if Peter was a disciple of John. Don't really know. But what I do know is, since he wasn't there, he would not have met Jesus that day if it hadn't been for Andrew coming to get him and saying, "Hey, come with me. I'm going to take you. I know where Jesus is. I'm going to bring you to Him." And he did bring him to Him. Many people need actually and literally to be brought to Jesus. There is something to be said about the old tradition, practice of bringing somebody, even to worship. Bringing somebody. It's not exactly the same thing as bringing somebody to Jesus, but it's a step in the right direction. It still shows the same care and love and devotion and concern for a person. Maybe we ought to strive to start doing that again. Certainly going to be a lot easier to bring them to Jesus if we start there. Or it won't be any more difficult, or it will be more difficult, most likely, if we don't start there. It's a good place to start. Not just inviting them, not just telling them, but bringing them. Not against their will. Literally, don't kidnap them. They won't get much out of it if you bring them here in a kidnapped state. And you might go to jail for doing it. But at least don't give up. Some people say no a lot of times before they say yes. Keep trying. Some people, after all, will never come to Jesus unless they're brought to Him. And that is what the Great Commission is. Bringing people to Jesus, to the truth that is found in Him. Finally, number 6, when a man is healed, it will be unmistakably evidenced in his life. Think about this man. We read in our scripture reading through verse 5. But it says, they went up to the roof, and somehow they made an opening where they could come down, and they let down the bed of that man, their friend, right where Jesus was. And Jesus, it says, seeing their faith, said to the sick man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Didn't say anything about his healing. But when they questioned, and Jesus responded to them, finally he said, "Take up your bed and walk." They questioned his authority to forgive sins. They said he was blaspheming. However, he said, "Take up your bed and walk." And that man took up his bed and walked, left, on his feet, under his own power and control. And even the people that saw this, that had never seen this man in their lifetime until this moment, would have known that that man had been healed. It was obvious. They saw it. But you know what? Everybody that ever saw that man again would know that Jesus healed him. Because literally every single thing that man did for the rest of his life would be evidence that Jesus healed him. He couldn't even walk without proving to everybody that knew him that Jesus had healed him. So literally everything he did in his life was going to be proof that Jesus had healed him. Well, what about in the spiritual sense? A person cannot remain the same after they come to Jesus. Not if they truly come to Him, if they truly come to Jesus. When a person truly comes in contact with Christ in obedience to the gospel, His blood, God's grace, they can't remain unchanged. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5:17, if anybody's in Christ, he is a new creation. Totally new creation. You're new. You are a new thing. The old passed away and the new has come. You're new. A new creation. When a person comes to Jesus in that way, there are some changes that definitely need to be made. And those changes are what people see. Take Paul the Apostle, for instance. Talk about a 180 of sorts. Most notorious anti-Christ preacher, an activist, anti-Christian, turned into one of the most, if not the most, bold and influential and effective servant of Jesus that ever walked the earth. And the people that saw that change in him were moved by that change. They knew it. They didn't have to question, well, I wonder if Paul had really had a run-in with Jesus. They knew it because they saw it in everything he did. They saw Jesus in him. They saw the change. It was unmistakable. The bed on that man's back showed everybody that great change had happened in him. Is there any evidence in your life that you can point to that would show people that a change has been made in your life? I bet you can pick out a change that needs to be made. I know I can. I can make a list. But what evidence is there that shows people that I have made changes? That there is a change that I've made in my life? We ought to be filled with good works, all good works, manifest other pieces of information or evidence, signs that I have made these changes, that Christ is living in me. When Paul said Christ lives in me, he wasn't bragging. And he wasn't telling them something that he hadn't already proven to them. He didn't even have to say that. The people that he said that to knew that Christ was living in him because they saw Christ living in him. The life I now live, I don't live. Jesus lives. He's living it in me. He lives it through me. He lives it for me. It's His life. My life is His. 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8 says, God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. Abound in every good work. Titus 3:8. The saying is trustworthy, and I want you to insist on these things, so that those who have believed in God may be careful to devote themselves to good works. These things are excellent and profitable for people. Be zealous, careful, and to devote yourselves to good works. All good works. There are good works, and then there are other good works. And other good works. But all good works, he says. And every good work. Not just the obvious things. Not just the things that we automatically think about. Helping the poor. Giving money to people who are in need, or giving things to people who are in need, or all these other type things like that. What about good works that I share with my brethren? My zeal, encouraging them to be stronger in the faith, encouraging them indirectly and directly in spoken word and in action. Let my zeal be the flame for somebody else rather than my lack of zeal being what puts that flame out or keeps that flame from being lit. What evidence is there in my life that Jesus is a part of my life? I'll say it again. People know when Jesus is in your life, and they know when He's not. People in the world see it, and they see when He's not there, and your brothers and sisters see it, and they know when He's not there. But we need to make sure that we do live our lives in such a way that people know, without a doubt, that you are Christ's, and that He is the ruler of your life, that you put Him first, His kingdom first, every day. Hopefully these thoughts from this text will help us to make a change in our lives. Even just one change. One change is a good change. Admit to ourselves that maybe I could do better about living in a way that people will see Jesus, letting my light shine. We could all do better. Everybody could do better. Doesn't matter how good you are, you can still do better. Take Jesus' example. Take these examples of these men, other men and women that we read about in the Scriptures. Show others that Jesus is the Lord of your life. Prove it. Prove it. Prove that He is, so that nobody will have a doubt, and that other people will see that and want to do that too. You will encourage somebody else. And just like I will have to answer for all those that I have discouraged through my indifference, all those that I have encouraged by my zeal and my passion, that won't go unnoticed either in heaven. God notices. He knows. He knows the people that I have helped. Even if I don't know. I may have helped people that I don't know about, but God knows. And I may not know about people that I have hurt or that I have hindered, but God knows. If there's anything that you need to make right, God gives you the opportunity all the time, every day. But now is a time that's always the best time, right now, whenever now is. And right now is now.